Welcome and good
Welcome,
afternoon,
Mathias.
good morning, everybody. Welcome to the day 2 of the second edition of Mastercard EMEA Sustainability Week 2023. My name is Andrea Pražáková and I lead Mastercard Foundry, ESG and Gaming for Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa, and I am your host today and this week. So yesterday we discussed a circular economy and the power of Web3. Today we will unpack how incredibly technology became powerful in driving sustainable choices of consumers. So please use the chat like you did yesterday and the Q&A to post questions. I will try to sneak them in as we speak throughout the hour, or we'll try to put them in the end. I am obviously joined by super cool panelists today. Despite the fact I wanted to write the intro by using ChatGPT. I usually do it, but this time I was thinking, okay, let me not do it. I decided against to, but I never decided to dream a bit, because one of the topics we will be talking about today are dreams. So in 2015, 70 sustainable goals were created, and one of many action countries and organizations set were net zero targets, right? Just yesterday, for the ones who dialing in from UAE, Dubai Road Authority, RTA, announced that public transport will be entirely emission-free by 2050, which is really ambitious goal, right? The RTA said that their new plan will result in reducing CO2 emission by 10 million tons, while saving about $817 million in comparison to current operation. Then their plan includes obviously electric taxis, net zero buildings, sustainable waste management. So I was imagining, right, how I, as Andrea, will have one app in my phone which will manage my personal sustainable goals, right? Because I am in a very privileged position where I can help and impact and change. So I was imagining that, I have this app where I set my sustainable goals. I am not sure if they will be 17, but let's say a couple of them. And I will see, how many children I support through education, how many meals I donate, so how I shop new or pre-owned items, sell and recycle. Do I shop in green merchants and travel to places which obviously are sustainable as well? I could use satellite data to my app to see if my house has the solar panels, if I have vertical farming, and how much water I use and electricity I produce, and how many children, how many girls I mentor, and how many communities I involve. So I can really go on and on. And all of this is actually possible with technology and data. And by no means, I don't want to take away the responsibility for governments and corporation. But I truly believe that, each of us can play much stronger and much active role to help to reach these 17 sustainable goals. And technology is a super critical actor in this. So without further ado, and if you like my idea about this super app, please tell me in the chat, right? Maybe we can vote for it today, and then Mathias and Johan can build it for us. So without further ado, just let me say that I'm really delighted to have here with us our partner, Mathias Wikström. He was born at 329 ppm. Matthias is Sweden-based renowned sustainability business leader and creative strategist. He aims to innovate as well as making a complex, how can communicate complex things. He founded Doconomy with his partner, Johan Phil, and he's spearheaded globally awarded from projects in finance. They are obviously Mastercard partner. We are super proud of it. And he is not only involved in finance, but sustainability, human rights. He has an EMBA with honors of Stockholm University of Economics with a focus of leading innovation. Now, I was asking Matthias, he achieved so much. What is his big, hairy, ambitious goal? So Matthias actually told me a secret that one of his big goals is he has yet to win an argument with his 17-year-old daughter. I am not there yet. My son is 12 and 13, but I will come for some advice. So welcome, Matthias. Really great to have you with us. My second guest is Johan Hemminger. Johan is a co-founder of Dreams. That's the part of the conversation I was referring to in the introduction. And he's currently COO. He leads its operation. Johan has an entrepreneurial background and co-founded an award-winning multi-digital agency, Monterosa, which was acquired by Publicist in 2012. And, I wanted to really get a little bit of juice on Johan. Very difficult to find anything on social media, but Johan told me that he is not only into tech and finance, but you might see him skiing in the mountains as an imagery PlayStation hero Speed. So if you are in PlayStation and you see anybody by the name of Speed, you know who it is. It's Johan. So great to have you with me, Johan. Matthias, again. Let me start straight with Matthias. Matthias, I read on your LinkedIn post the other day that you just finished 3 years as the Doconomy CEO, which you founded a couple of years ago with your partner. Can you just give us a little bit of story? Why did you create Doconomy? What possessed you to do that?
Yes, thank you, Andrea. So looking at what we're trying to do is basically to educate the many around the abilities to create a more sustainable tomorrow. And the consequences of that would be that we future-proof the planet in a way that I would hope that the next generation is going to be very happy to inherit, but also very proud to pass on based on the knowledge that we can present them with, supporting them with digital tools, with best-in-class data, and with a UX that makes sustainability look sexier than non-sustainability.
I like how you position it. So, if we world-class tools, that sounds, really like 10,000 feet. If you bring it down, how does your technology actually educate the consumers?
No, so what we do is that we wanted to educate everyone around cause and effect, that every action has a reaction. And we understood early on that we would need to utilize something that you do every day, something that is already part of your daily life. Instead of trying to come up with something completely new, we utilized the efficiencies of the payment cards. So initially, we used the payment cards as a vehicle for this education or this understanding, scoring each and every transaction, making every transaction count, both on a monetary perspective, but also on a planetary perspective, presenting to the user the cost in the local currency, but also the planetary cost measured in CO2 emissions equivalents or freshwater intensity.
Very good. Johan, when I'm listening to Matthias and then to his story, how he started, you co-founded Dreams in 2015. And by the way, Dreams is a really cool name. What is the purpose of Get Dreams? I went onto your website, look at the application, obviously. I hope, we will post the website links here as well. Can you tell us what is the goal of Get Dreams?
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, first of all, I agree. We are quite happy about the name Dreams. It really resonates with what we're actually doing. So when we found out that the brand was actually kind of available for registration, it was that was a dream itself, because what we wanted to kind of solve when starting Dreams was to help people feel good about money. Because there's so many people out there that are quite stressed, and one of the kind of core reasons for that is that they have a hard time saving money. So that was kind of the first problem that we wanted to help out with, and kind of with the background that both me and my co-founder Henrik has, it would be of course natural to start with tech and beautiful design, but we actually went and studied some behavioral science to really try to understand the root cause of why it is so difficult for the many to save money, which was quite intriguing. Both in terms of how we deal with money, but also, of course, in these days, how we can kind of help people to contribute in saving the planet. So what we actually do and wanted to do from the very beginning was to help people feel good about money by helping them save more money than ever before. And Dreams is actually where it starts. So our starting point is to really understand where our users want to go. What do they want to do with the money? What's the kind of emotional connection to it? And just by defining the dreams, you're already on the path of success. So that's why kind of the service itself really resonates with the brand name Dreams.
Obviously, Mathias was talking about CO2 emission, water density. So it's really a lot on the E part of the ESG, right? But you're talking about that financial health is very much on the S part. Can you maybe give us an example? What would the user experience? So how do I set up my dreams? What does it mean for me? How do you educate me to do that?
So what we do, first of all, a dream is just a dream if you don't make it concrete. So concrete in our world means that you color it with an image that is really makes the dream more visible. And then you add a date to it, so it becomes even more tangible when you want to reach it. And then obviously you connect the sum to it. And the time you connect a sum and a time, then you have a plan. It goes from a dream into a plan. And then we help the user to break down that very plan into small steps. Because what we're trying to do is to give the users the reward that you get when you actually shop. When you spend money, you get those instant rewards. The kicks.
So like end of in form of my own savings, right?
Yes. So we want to give you a direction, but also the triggers, the rewards for those small decisions,
right?
The small savings that you make that actually turns into you reaching a dream. And for us, it's all about surprising the users with that they are capable of more than they ever thought possible. So we're really into the kind of building a reward cycle that you get these that we create the kicks that you don't get when you actually are saving towards something in the far future.
What I liked about the experience is that I can, define that, let's say I want to buy a bicycle and I can put aside every single step, right? Matthias, I'm sure that the audience is burning and saying, this sounds all really great, right? But what does it actually mean? So from the experience, from your deployments, which we did, you did yourself or with ourselves, what is the real impact? What do you see in terms of behavior change, in terms of numbers and shift towards positive behavior?
So that's the most interesting question, I think. And looking at how we slice it, being still a young territory, we look at business value, such as number of deposits, size of deposits, increase in net promoter score, increase in reputational value and recommendation value, looking at time spent in the application, traditional metrics that any bank goes like, woohoo, this we like, and then we're connecting it also to the change of behavior out of the user's impact. And that's where we're working a lot with leading academia and science in order to really define how can we see the transition in between the different verticals. So the banks that we have worked with sharing the data for the longest can see, okay, there is a transition from, say, high impact categories to lower impact categories, but delivering on the same promise. And that is something that we want to have third-party vetting on. So we're working with Stockholm School of Economics and their Center for Sustainable Consumption to have them utilize the data and the behavior of the users in their research. So when that research is presented, we can reference that and provide the exact numbers. But already today, there is other data that we have at play combined with research that already exists. And we see that as soon as you introduce a second language in the transaction, a language of environmental impact, 24% claim to reduce their impact, no matter in between which vertical. And I think that's a very high number. And if we can have all of the user base today, we're working with slightly south of 100 banks representing around 700 to 800 million end users. And if 24% reduction could meet those users, I think we could open a bottle of good wine at night and say, great job done, So that's one component. But you want us into something that's extremely important here, and there is an overbelief in facts. We are emotional creatures. Emotional questions calls for an emotional response, and in the climate crisis perspective, it's not that we're stupid, it's that we're scared. So we need to have something that connects us out of a behavioral perspective, time over time over time, shaping a sustainability and longevity in the behavior, not only achieving this once, but achieving it every day. And that's when we can get substantial and also tangible reduction of impact in hitting the 1.5 degree limit and the 2030 and the 2050 targets set out in the reduction targets. So,
you know, it's interesting. I just want to pitch in what you said just now, right? Because I mean, we've been having discussion with many banks, right? And one of the first reactions often is, you know, this will scare customers off, right? We don't want to show them what is the negative impact, right? And I think it's really, again, you know, the question of perspective, how you're looking at the information. Is it information which empowers you and educates you, or you know, is it the information which scares you and you say, no, I don't want to show it to anybody because now they see they will not spend, they will not buy anymore. But I think it's about how shifting the mindset as well of a corporation, right? To change the DNA, say, you know, towards action. And first question to action is to be transparent about what's the real deal is, right?
absolutely. And I think I hear you. And I think if you're afraid of sharing information with your clients, I think you might need to review that at another perspective. But I belong to the people thinking that the number of transactions will go up because of transparency, because we will see a different kind of value chain, providing different kind of quality, providing different kind of service and experiences, but also products. Today, maybe I buy a t-shirt once and then it's thrown away. Tomorrow might be buying a sweatshirt and reselling it like through Vestiaire or any other like vintage kind of websites, and all of a sudden we have doubled the number of transactions for the same product, and that's going to triple and quadruple going forward. I think people are empowered.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Johan. So we heard about 24%, you know, claim to reduce the impact. What and I saw on your website you have over 1 million dreams fulfilled, I think, something like that. Can you just you know, make it real? So the users consumers who use your technology, right? I think it's like losing weight. You know, in the beginning of the year, you say, I will lose weight and go to gym, right? And then like by 100 people say it in January, and then like 20 are still there in April exercising and dieting, right? And then they wait until December until they start to diet again. So now with saving, you know, what other phenomena you see, you know, customers you onboard who get very excited and who actually do it, and you know, what is the success ratio of the financial health application?
Well, first of all, I mean, in general, users save around 180 euros more per month than they did before. But what's really important?
How much? 180 euros more?
180, yeah. And what is really important for us is what we call the aha moment. That really early in, when they start their journey at Dreams, we want them to really get this feedback that, wow, I can do this. And guess what? It wasn't that difficult. And then it's important to kind of continue with these small wins, because one thing is when you actually reach the kind of long-term goal, but the most important thing is actually the journey towards the big goal, the rewards that you get for these actions that you take. So what we see is that when we also give them these aha moments, they start to create new dreams. So one phenomenon, just to give an example, we have, I believe, 10,000 tattoo dreams. You start with
tattoo on.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So they start with a tattoo dream.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, when they kind of either reach this first dream or they actually get this first kind of aha moment, they start to create new dreams.
Please don't tell me it's a second tattoo.
Exactly. No, but then all of a sudden they're going into buffer accounts. They are saving towards down payment for the kids' apartment. I mean, so they start kind of, it's going from fun and kind of instant into actually them being motivating to take care of the even kind of the boring stuff, quote unquote.
I love that
That's-
example. Really, that's really empowering. You know, it's because it goes back to the emotions, right? And the nudges you give them. Is going to the fitness analogy. It's like a personal trainer who constantly tells you, you can do it, go further, right? Push yourself harder. So you use the technology to do that. Amazing. You know, I mean, whatever you describe now, data is obviously so critical, right? In both of your businesses. Matthias, you know, how do you ensure that the data you are using to support the carbon calculator or any of the products you have, because that's obviously one of the products you offer, that the numbers are the right numbers from the right sources and properly accredited? Because there is so many fintechs right now out there and everybody says they have their own carbon calculator and everybody has so many things. So can you demystify that? Because this is obviously the key moment, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been working with this for 7 years now, since we set the methodology as the best-in-class calculation using investor-grade data. We invest millions every year into data that we use as an educating component for the banks that we work with to educate their users. It's the same quality, the highest quality of data that the banks themselves use to make multi-million-dollar decisions with. We don't see why their end user or their clients, the retail clients, should have anything less than the best. So we work together with S&P, Standard & Poor's True Cost, providing best-in-class data, and also using a methodology vetted by Ernst & Young. This is important out of a reputational perspective, because I don't think the banks should take reputational risk. And we now see some of the banks coming back to us saying, oh, we tried this old data or diverse data sets and open base or open source data, which most of the time is quite old or incomplete, and then you miss out on the full energy transition. So there is good data sets out there, but the challenge is to get great data sets, and not only to have great data sets, but to have great data sets that are comparable in between the verticals. And that's where I'm very proud to see that we don't discriminate if you are a billion-dollar company or if you're one consumer. We're putting investor-grade data, impact levels on CO2 and H2O at the fingertips of consumers in everyday consumption. So I think that's a very important component. And I think I love the symbol of you know, the calories thing. So basically looking at myself, you know, I buy a gym card and I expect things to happen. And then I realize nothing is happening. Maybe I also have to go to the gym. So that's where you have to measure your progress with the best-in-class capabilities. Now, over time, I hope that this data will get more and more widely distributed, and working together with MasterCard and some of the absolutely market leaders in every region on the banking side. We see this as a very positive development, and leading up to COP28 also in Dubai is going to be interesting to see how we can showcase which banks that are walking the talk, which banks that are democratizing data and impact using best-in-class sources.
You know, you operate obviously on the Island Index, right? Which you promote as well, and we promote as well. Can you just explain a little bit, you know, how is it built? So if, let's say, I go and I transact with my card, right? And then the transaction data is sent to the system, how much I spend, what is the currency, and what is the merchant I spend on. How do you assess what is the carbon footprint, which I actually have?
Yes, so what we do is we take the total carbon footprint in the category that you're spending, because the transaction data carries that information. And then we take your spendings representation in that category. How much of the carbon footprint in the line of business that you're shopping with is what you are enabling? What's your part of it? Calculating that, connecting it to the merchant category code, so that we have the category, and a later state, connecting it to the merchant ID for specific companies. The third level of granularity will be connecting it to product level category, like sneakers, t-shirts, jeans. And the fourth level will be brand connected specific products, looking at what's in your basket, each and every item. Two things. integrity and privacy issues. Maybe you don't want us to calculate exactly what's in your basket, so this needs to be an opt-in. It needs to be completely voluntary for you to be able to act on the information. And the second thing is the transaction data doesn't hold the line item information. So we need to have the tech resolve between the receipt data and the transaction data, but that's only tech. You know, MasterCard is the global leader in this space. That's going to be resolved quite short term, I would think. So that's how we do it. And the Åland Index, the name is actually from the origin of the first idea where we developed this methodology on behalf of Ålandsbanken, which is a small Finnish bank situated in the middle of the Baltic Sea. And they really wanted to engage their clients in understanding the environmental impact of their daily choices.
Amazing. We will go a little bit, I think, further in the discussion around the product and basket and the brand level, right? But I want to go into, you know, we hear generative AI every day, right? And I was wondering, because Johan, you mentioned that you use AI as well in your technology, and it's super, you know, buzzword. Can you, you know, dive a little bit deeper and tell us, you know, how do you use AI, right? What role does it play? And, you know, because let's say I am a young consumer, okay, and I'm not young anymore, but let's assume I am young, right? So I'm a young consumer at a bank, and you know, and obviously I want to be responsible. And what is the experience which you're giving me with my dreams, where you and how do you utilize the you know, artificial intelligence to take me to my goals?
This is a very exciting question, the $1 million question that we kind of we discuss it every day, and we believe that we're on to something. But where we started was actually in the tech team, simply using AI to be faster and better. Everything from pair coding to quality assuring of the code itself, just to get to know the technology and to kind of start ground up. But I love the comparison you did with the personal trainer, because that's exactly what we would like to do. Because what I said in the beginning, no matter if it's in regards to helping you save more money or reduce CO2, it's all about emotions, right? So the layer that you can have on top of data. So you have the destination at Dreams, you know where you're heading, but what we're also adding is the here and now aspect. So for instance, if you go to personal training, I love that kind of comparison.
you can take it.
Yes. Yeah, but what the first thing they do, obviously, is to ask you questions. What are you going?
Right.
Like the plan. How many times a week do you want to train? I mean, if you answer 2 times a week compared to 5 days a week, the kind of plan becomes different, right? So starting out with questions, starting out with really understanding the motivations and the goals makes it possible to actually create a coach layer. And with AI, it can really become this personal trainer for you to spend wisely, to spend mindfully, both in terms of your wallet and the climate. So that is what we have started to do. So based on our Dreams framework, based on the savings method that we've built, we're now kind of making it even more smarter and more relevant by adding this coach layer.
You know, I want to stay a little bit with AI and go to generative AI, right? So I was at MIT last month, and our professor showed us how he created millions of lines of code to write a new Sudoku application, and it took him about 10 minutes, right? So I have a question to both of you, because you obviously employ designers, developers, and have big tech teams, obviously, to run behind you, right? How will this incredible shift in the approach to code development and UI UX design, you know, impact your company? I know, how will the profile of your team change? Because they will not need to write the code anymore, possibly, right? They will need to give the right commands to write the code and so on. Mathias, I want to start with you. You know, how does it change and how does it will make you better?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to building on what you once said, I think there is a coaching layer to begin with, setting many things that has previously been instructions are now going to be dialogues. And that is of great value, I think, because it is in the conversation, no matter if it's with an AI or with the person, that you really it really resonates or it sticks with you. In regard of the impact it's going to have on our tech side and building our services and the UX and the UI, absolutely. What is unique is going to be more unique. And what is plain vanilla is going to flood the market. Plain vanilla is going to be all over the place, which is beautiful because then the richness in contrast will increase.
It will be democratized, right?
Absolutely. And what is value is going to be much easier to understand, because just because usability or time to product or time to market fit is faster doesn't mean that it's unique, right? So the uniqueness will still have a human component connected to it, or an AI component, but it's not going to be as irrational as the human, which is many times an instrumental part of the creative process. And building on Johan's legacy, building one of the most successful, creative agencies in the Nordics, you know that when everybody else sig, you need to sag, right? As Sachi said back in the day. So if you adhere to the discipline or the common methodologies, you need to break that, and AI will become that of sorts. And if you use select parts of the tools, it's going to assist you to further accelerate from the competition and further illustrate and educate the end user. So I'm very hopeful around that. But hey, we're only scratching the surface here. As you know, Elon Musk just got approval of putting chips into our brains. So maybe.
I know, very exciting, right? Neuralink this week. Johan, obviously you already use AI, right? And now it's moving into a supercharged generative AI. So are you already using some of it? Are you already, experimenting with a generative AI within your current scenario? If yes, how is it going? If not, when are you starting the experiments? What impact will it have on the product?
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, we have started, and kind of before we turn into the user aspect, we implement it into the organization as such, because our belief is that our ability to keep on innovating is not about scale, it's about volume, it's about smartness, and when I talk about volume, I mean people. So I think the effect that we have seen simply with pair coding with the help of AI has been immensely. The effect has been immensely. And to your point, the organization will shift in the form of competences. How you can utilize AI in the smartest way possible. And I mean, all these buzzwords as prompt engineering and all of those things, I mean, it's just an example of the kind of knowledge and skills that will be necessary for us to be able to attract going forward in order to utilize it in the best possible way.
Right. Now on 5th of June, I think the highly anticipated Apple Glass should be released. They postponed it multiple times. There is obviously massive expectation. So I imagine that wearing the Apple glasses and walking into a store with the Apple glasses, you will be not only able to see the calorie content, but ultimately in the future you will be able to see all the different information about the product, right? You will be able to see where the raw material came from. You would be able to what the CO2 impact was to get it into the store. All the information across the life cycle, right? And Mathias, you touched on it in the beginning, right? We spoke about merchant category, and then now we are almost like that. This has an option to just completely drop onto the basket level, hopefully one day to the brand level as well. But what are your plans around it to go, and how fast will we arrive to the basket level information? Because that's what the consumers really are hungry for as well.
Well, there is two questions in one there. How fast to get to the basket level, and the number one is how fast to get to the basket, like a distribution of data, and then basket level information, as in what is in the basket. I think the distribution is going to be quite fast. The information around what is in the basket is going to be quite challenging for a few more years. Like the EU has been working on the PEF initiative, which is the Product Environmental Footprint Initiative, for quite some time, and they still haven't really deployed anything that is substantial. What we see is when you calculate the carbon footprint on product level, there is a full business of LCA consultants calculating that, helping companies that do not have that in their own organizations to calculate this, and it takes time. It's quite costly, and there is a few different tweaks to this, which makes product level calculations non-comparable. And what's the point in having a impact data calculation presented through the latest tech if it's not comparable? Then it's just an opinion. And that's what we tried to mitigate with building the 2030 calculator, which is an online tool free of use for all producing brands, so that they can calculate the product level carbon footprint cradle to gate at full comparability according to the same data set, same methodology, and so forth. Now we have somewhere north of 10,000 users on that, and some think that's great, and some think that's not enough, and I think it's far from enough. But what it does present, it presents comparability, and the only rationale around impact metrics is comparability. So we will get to the basket tech-wise. We will be able to see information pre-purchase on product level through glasses or not. But that data needs to be relevant. And unfortunately today, there is not enough data on product level connected to brands. So that's why what we wanted, we had this idea around what we call the global carbon files, which is a database with that you can connect any transaction or any information, vehicle or channel to, that would withdraw the specific data for that specific product connected to that specific brand. And it's going to take some time. The different verticals are in constant battle around who's doing it best. So you have apparel doing it best in class, and then you have furniture doing it best in class, and then you have the automotive industry doing it best in class, and everyone is doing it in different ways. So that needs to converge, and it will over time. But it's going to take some time until we get there. Distribution will be faster.
Yeah, I think that what we see currently, especially Web3, right, there is a very big focus on provenance rather than carbon, right? So almost like the environmental impact for now, because the provenance is more business impact and more sexy in a sense, right? And traceability rather than the environmental impact. So there is, and even in the new lifecycle assessment tools, you can see that there are so many different methodologies, right? And across the different sectors. But, because obviously Europe is very evolved in that and makes big progress also from a legislation perspective. So I would assume that Europe will be one of the first continents which will have which will be able to go into a basket level. From a Doconomy perspective, where do you see that? When do you see that happening? Is it like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
I think it's within 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
But we will be surprised. I agree with you that we will see a lot of traction in the regulatory landscape. By default, has in environmental context been driven by Europe for a long period of time. US is now picking up thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, Biden administration putting a lot of money on the table, saying, hey, market, come here, solve the sustainability topic, and you will get rewarded for it. You can get a slice of the pie. However, for future trade, taking carbon taxes and carbon borders into account and leakage and carbon reporting, I think we will see a lot of emerging economies upping their game in these calculations in order to be relevant to export at all. Otherwise, it says scope 3 is going to be regarded a virus of sorts. So I think we will see very fast progress, and that's also driven by UNDP, for example, that in line with the opening of the General Assembly last fall, introduced the blueprint for financial structure for emerging economies, and some of the economies' tools are on the table to be implemented in that, to make sure that we're not accelerating the north and south divide, so that everyone that is in a producing economy, or the east and west divide for that matter, everyone in producing economy, everyone that's running a business, should have the right tools to be able to calculate the good enough impact in order to be relevant export. And that is going to be extremely instrumental in order to get everyone aligned around this topic, and instead of having the topic separating us even further. We got into this mess together. The only way out of it is together. But we must also remember that the greatest part of the impact is still with the 10% of the population in the world.
Yeah, I think that you're touching on an interesting point. Yesterday, we had the CEO of Another Tomorrow, and they built obviously the entire traceability, not only from a provenance, but environmental impact from the time when they started the product. And I think there are two things which came out really clearly. One was that there is a massive opportunity in the last mile of the product, right? Because there's not really much happening yet in terms of how you actually recycle each of the pieces of the items, and how it is difficult for companies who are there for such a long time and have a really vast amount of products to bring this into it, right? I want to jump into a slightly different theme, which is, how, all of these information can be used to impact a person, right? In the beginning, we spoke about how individuals could potentially create their own sustainable goals, right? And measure them and have a positive impact, each single one of us, right? So I imagine that, even from a bank perspective, and of course, in the future, the bank will need my permission to give and see all my data. Besides of my financial data, I will, be able to see my ESG data. So how am I a good citizen in a sense, or how am I health data? I think we touched on it, Johan. Go back to the exercise gym, right? Do I take care of my physical health, my mental health, and obviously the house and the planet, right? And sounds like a police state a little bit, but bear with me on that. I like the idea. So how do you think that Doconomy and Dreams can start to help me build my positive profile, right? Where maybe potentially I could even create credits which I could sell on a trading desk, right? As an individual, or through a union, right? So let's say I behaved really well. So instead of only policing me, I could maybe start to create credits by virtue of having solar panels. So I could have solar credits. By offsetting, I could have carbon credits. But of course, as an individual, this is such a small piece, right? Where do you see your companies helping me in that, from a financial health perspective, and also from environmental perspective? Johan, I will start with you.
Yes, I mean, as we see it, Doconomy is our gold mine, in the sense that they provide us with the tools we need to make behavioral change happen. Because what we try to build on top of all that data is the emotional layer, which means that we want to create we want you to make mindful spending decisions. Mindful spending decisions is both good for your wallet and for the planet. Because if you look back the past 10 years, a lot of the innovation has happened within transactions. It's easier to transact, and we all love that. But our brains doesn't, if we want to be long term, because we get the impulse, right, from the aha moment you get instantly when shopping. So what we are really trying to do here is to combine data with what you value here and now, what's important to you here and now. What motivations do you have here and now? And what is important long-term for you? And if we can combine these things, all of a sudden, the tips and tricks we give to you is not facts and figures. It's tips from the personal trainer that you mentioned earlier. That actually gives you, and once again, back to what Mathias said, it's a dialogue.
Right.
And that
You know,
dialogue makes everything smarter. So no matter if it's in a kind of in a UX environment, or if it's voice or glass, whatever it might be, it's the same thing, kind of.
Mathias, I want to go and hear your opinion about, you know, the question around different types of credits. And I know that credits in general are, you know, a sensible topic, and, you know, there is a lot of things, but, you know, how do you see Doconomy to enable consumers to go onto that level where I would be able to create my own credits, obviously with all the right methodology and so on, and possibly, you know, be able to sell them?
Well, Andrea, firstly, I love the idea of credits. So I think there is a completely much more positive alignment around creating incentives than creating barriers, right? At the end of the day, as in every situation in life, you know, I think we're going to have both. But looking at the incentives part, take, for example, you have to have a 360 perspective on your impact, looking at your finances, what kind of financial solutions,
Right.
what are you investing in, what's the return on investment, what is the interest rate of any green mortgages you have, looking at your consumption, looking at your energy bill, looking at your mobility, looking at your menu choice, you know, stuff like that, a full picture. In Sweden, for example, today, if you put up solar panels that can be subsidized by the government, or they can be provided to you on a lower interest rate out of a green perspective from your bank, you can produce electricity that you can resell on the grid. And all of a sudden, you become part of the sustainability transition into a net zero economy, looking at what we're doing with well-distributed renewable energy sources, right? So that is in its simplest form, that is
true.
a form of credit. That is a form of credit, because I've been incentivized to go more sustainable. I put solar panels up, I sell the excess electricity or power that I have, and I get a credit for it, a monetary credit.
Right.
So I agree with you, and that is going to be extremely interesting to see how that can evolve over time, and what would be the difference between taxation or incentives.
I wanted to go there. Right? Exactly.
So that's going to be, I think you're spot on, and we should have a longer conversation around this, because I think it's also a part of coming back to the calorie kind of similarities around working out, having a coach, someone to coach you, having the dialogue, having incentives to do the right thing, but also understanding the consequences of if you choose to do other things. Coming back, Johan used a very good word around this whole thing, and it's mindful, right? Mindful decisions, mindful consumption. We have been acting as if there is no cost, there is no consequence to our decisions. We haven't priced the externalities, we haven't priced the water, we haven't priced the land, we haven't priced the environment as such. Now we're looking at that out of a carbon credits perspective, fair, you know, but I think we need to get further. So coming back to the old example of, are you producing mineral water or are you producing plastic bottles?
Yes.
And that's I think is probably the easiest example of that. You're basically probably taking the water at no cost, and you're paying for the bottles, but it's the water that is the value creation that you provide. So I think to that point, looking at credits, looking at taxation, applying that on a corporate perspective, we're looking at business model innovation. Because not only can we do the same thing over and over again, utilizing different frameworks, but we need to innovate on business model as well. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow, I think, for some business models, but I'm very curious to see where the human mind will take this.
Yeah.
Because we have survived everything so far.
So far, you know, I've been in banking for 23 years before I joined MasterCard, and you know, if I would be back in banking, I think I would build it into my scoring system, right? I would start to, because today customers get assessed on their some financial stuff which you put in the Excel spreadsheet, right? But it's not only the ability to pay, but it's willingness, and in the willingness is multiple different concepts of your behavior, right? Could be the saving, as Johan is saying, could be your social and environmental responsibility, it could be credits. I think that whole scheme offers really a multitude of how financial institutions could today obviously approach this and build into their strategies, right?
Absolutely. Look at the insurance companies. Look at the insurance companies, because I think you're absolutely right. The insurance companies are basically doing business in the future, right?
Yes.
That's where their value creation, or they put the risk ahead. And insurance companies are already doing this. There's an insurance company in South Africa looking at how can we score people on their sustainability criteria in regard of responsibilities, risk, willingness to pay, discipline to pay, and so forth. And this is something that's going to obviously have a very, you're absolutely right. This is going to have a great impact on your credit score. If you're not expected to pay back, or if you're expected to have a high impact, it's going to cost you more.
I had a discussion yesterday on a panel, and I was saying, I can't wait. Then you will obviously in your glucose monitor, it will take all the vitals, and you will get a message through a system tells you, Andrea, you didn't eat well, you didn't exercise, you had some wine, your insurance policy will increase by 5% in the next 10 days if you don't change your behavior, right? But I think the abilities are amazing. There is a question as well in the chat. So do we know if customers that focus on environmental are better risk? This could be really interesting for banks, something which we just discussed. So I mean, Johan, obviously you see it more from a saving perspective, but you combine it with environment. Do you have any data if customers who are well behaved on the saving side and who take care of the environment are less risk than other customers?
We've seen tendencies, but we at this stage we can't draw any conclusions on it. But I would certainly guess so, for sure. But
maybe we should do a POC.
I don't have any data on it.
Yeah, Mathias, do you have any data points around how the behavior on the sustainable or environmental aspect can is a driving factor of better credit risk?
The only I have two really substantial data points, and that is two consumer credit financial service providers that are now looking to see how they can score their clients with sustainability metrics off the back of a successful case done by an insurance company in South Africa a few years ago. So those two banks are the data points that I think are very tangible, understanding that, okay, so there is progress here. There is progress to be made, and that is quite obvious.
Amazing. I think I have something as well in Q&A. Johan, when we're talking about goal-based financial planning as an underlying guideline principle of dreams, is that are we talking about goal-based financial planning as an underlying guiding principle in dreams? There's a question for Neha.
Yeah, the answer would be the short answer would be yes. But we are, I mean, in the same way as Mathias mentioned before, in terms of turning into science, or, I mean, the frameworks that we're leaning towards are mainly coming from the academia. Mm-hmm. So we have a research institute to really make sure to kind of gain all the latest learnings in order to change behavior, which is, as we all know, a very, very, very difficult thing to do. So behavioral economics would be the framework I would.
Okay, Mathias, I have one for you as well, a cheeky one, especially around Gen Z. So, there is no doubt today that consumers are increasingly becoming more conscious of their choices and its impact on the planet. What are some of the challenges that you encounter while trying to influence user behaviors towards sustainable choices, and how successful it was?
I think looking at Gen Z, I think the question they are asking themselves is not, do you want a better job? It's, do you want a better life? And a better life is prioritized. And with that comes a sense of belonging, a sense of responsibility, a sense of citizenship. I think Gen Z rather defines itself as as a citizen rather than a consumer. And I think with the citizenship comes responsibilities, pros and cons. As a consumer, you're basically up until today a mindless person walking around spending money, which is quite degrading. Actually, we need to look at people in the whole perspective. And out of that, in that context, I definitely think that the topic is extremely high prioritized. And if you connect that to the transition of wealth in the world, the intergenerational transition of wealth, we're going to see a lot more citizen-like consumers or mindful consumers in the years to come, also looking at altruistic efforts and donations. We're going to see a lot more of them in the market than we have seen so far. We've seen globalization, off the back of industrialization, looking at digitalization. Next thing is going to be sustainabilization, no doubt.
I want to, you touch a little bit on the future, and we have 4 minutes. I just want to spend last 2 minutes before we close on the future, right? And the future, I mean, we have, I know Mathias have with children, I have two. Johanna, I didn't ask you if you have kids. So
I have kids, yes.
Okay, perfect. So all of us have children, right? So education is really key, and obviously we can see it in different countries and different regions. Sustainability is giving a slightly different priority, right? Where, from your perspective as a corporate who operates in sustainability, how do you partner, for example, with schools and universities to bring awareness to educate the kids, show them the tools, and build these ambassadors, an army of loud voices in their own households to push this forward? Johanna, I will start with you.
Yeah, I mean, if what we have been able to do, I think early on, is to be very relevant in social media. We've been kind of open the lid to talking about money, which can be a very sensitive topic because it's quite personal. But where we have focused more on what you do than the money itself, how you want to live your life, to Mathias' point. And so what we have, where we have focused our efforts has been on ambassadorships in terms of both influencers, but also our own ambassadors that has, through content and by kind of giving examples from their own lives in terms of what they do in order to change behavior and to take mindful financial decisions. That has been kind of the focus that we've had. And I think if you look at the customer base that we have, 70% of our customers are women. And I think that also reflects.
That reflects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mathias, we have 1 minute and then I need to close it off. Any partnership you have with schools and universities? Anything how you influence? I give you 60 seconds,
So there's two things, education and collaboration. Stockholm School of Economics, looking at Oxford, the platform for net zero, looking also to team up with 2 other universities in the US, working with Dreams Tech with a vast network of behavioral scientists within academia. But we also need to look at educating, and how can we do that, working with Tokyo, the prefecture in Tokyo, and educating all high school students around cause and effect using the lifestyle calculator developed with the United Nations. So it's twofold, utilizing academia to enhance and helping academia to improve.
Amazing. So we are just in the end of the session. There was a really interesting comment from Ohan, who said, having a better job is essential for achieving better life quality. And I couldn't agree more with that as well. Of course, there are aspirations. We do talk here from a position of privilege, right? Because we all have jobs and live in great countries, so I definitely think that it's our responsibility to ensure that there are more and more people who can live like us. So thank you so much, Mathias and Johan. It was an incredible pleasure to have you here today. Tomorrow we will be joined by Rana, the founder and CEO of Surplus, and Nadia, who is head of sustainability and information governance from Zurich, MENA. We will take a closer look on how to help and integrate and communicate into ESG strategy into companies. You know, how can they hire the right talent, attract the right investors, how the ESG governance is working, and a circular approach into the economy. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see you tomorrow. Mathias, Johan, was me great pleasure. My name is Andrea Pražáková, and I hope to see you tomorrow.